And worse. Communists rename everything they can. Toronto is making street names completely unpronounceable. We're going to have a new segment today called Mark Tries to Say a Name That Is Unpronounceable. Maybe I'll nail it the first time out. I don't know. Who knows? I looked at the name a couple of times and I thought to myself, I'm not even going to try that, but I'm going to try it. And it's going to be terrible. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start with Treason. And this is a looped video. So it's being shared by CBC Watcher. But this is an MP who's in the Liberal caucus, not a minister, but just a backbencher. And he is not going to be running again because he's done. And he says China is an existential threat to Canada. We need to start thinking our way out of this. And he says it's in the police stations, Confucius Institutes, universities, police stations. I really want to underline the police stations thing, because I feel like that's going to come back, and we're going to talk about that later in the show. Okay, so here's an MP. I hope that it's not too difficult to hear. It's kind of muddled, the sound, but I don't think I can turn it up. I don't think turning it up will help. So here we go.
The government of China is an existential threat to Canada on a multiplicity of levels, and we need to come to grips with that.
Is your government doing enough to deal with that, to confront it?
Well, it's not for me to say.
Well, you're a member of the governing caucus.
The caucus, right. But I think we need as a nation to come to grips with the desire of the government of China to turn us all into vassal states. And I don't think we have.
He said we need to come to grips with the will of the government of China to turn us all into vassal states. And I don't think we have. That's what he said. Sorry if it's kind of muddy, so I'm trying to...
So you think that the public inquiry is warranted then?
The reporter's trying to trap him, and he's just trying to speak kind of candidly. And she's trying to... I think she's misreading the situation. He's open, like he's really talking. All she had to do was talk honestly and not speak in like political rhetoric, like framing it in a public inquiry is ridiculous. He has absolutely no say in a public inquiry. Okay. And him saying, oh yeah, we should, that would make headlines because that's making news. I mean, what he's saying is kind of making news anyway. But I think she's misstepping here, but he gets back on track and he continues to, expose what is known, and it's shocking.
I think we need to think our way through this very, very carefully.
Why? What's the risk of it?
Well, because it's an existential threat that we've never ever faced before on a multiplicity of levels.
It sounds like you're saying it's more of a problem in terms of the election and the democratic process.
It's more than the election. It's at the universities, it's at the police stations, it's at the Confucius Institutes, it's at the exploitation of resources, I think it's far bigger.
Questions being raised now about what the government knew about foreign interference.
Well,
he says he thinks it's far bigger than it's being played out, like far bigger than it's being viewed. I don't think he's wrong. And so we've got Liberal MPs who aren't going to stand for re-election, who are saying that China is an existential threat to Canada, who's saying that we're not assessing this threat correctly, and we really need to think our way out of this. It's in the police stations. It's everywhere, okay? In the police stations. Andy Brooke says, the RCMP recently commented that anyone disclosing classified information leading to the identification of any of the MPs allegedly engaged in treason or traitorous activities, italics deliberate, could themselves be subject to a criminal investigation. Huh. Isn't that weird? So if you expose treason, but it's classified, that treason's classified, sir. You're going to have to come with me. How dare you expose those traitors? That's what's going on. I wonder if the police station, including the RCMP, is compromised. I think so. Back to Andy. He says it fails to address the other side of the same coin. What happens should a person fail to make every effort and take all reasonable steps to prevent the continuation of repeat or repetition of the offense, or the commission of another offense not limited to the offense of treason, contrary to section 46.2 of the Criminal Code, RSC 1985 C46. So Andy Brooks says, serious question, could Justin Trudeau be investigated for the offense of omitting to prevent treason? And then he gives the same Criminal Code reference. So it's interesting what's going on. Could China's influence have penetrated all the way down to municipalities, police stations, RCMP, and more? Possibly. It's quite plausible considering their behavior, right? And that's very concerning. Here is Blacklock's reporter, and they're reporting Public Safety Minister LeBlanc. It's not Matt LeBlanc. Hold on a second. Who is it? Dominic LeBlanc. Joey won't commit to unmasking spies before the next election as MPs call for names. Let's face it, if there were 6 conservatives on that list, we have the names. And so it's interesting. The governing coalition, the Liberals, don't want, and the NDP don't want to release the names. Jagmeet Singh has said, nobody in my cabinet, or nobody in my caucus is, working for China. And then Justin Trudeau hears about that and has a very pregnant pause and says, I don't know if I'd believe that from Jagmeet Singh. So that's interesting. And the fact that we haven't heard any names lends some kind of credibility to the idea that conservatives don't have any. But again, I am absolutely not, who knows? I think in the absence of any evidence, all 338 are guilty until proven innocent. Right? And at this point, I think forensic audits are in order. Justin Trudeau's got quite a lot richer being prime minister, right? And that's odd, don't you think? Right? It's a very, very strange job to enrich yourself so completely while crippling everybody else with carbon taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I don't like the idea of going into an election without any information. And I think that probably if treason has been committed, we should be dealing with that. But it's going to be difficult if the police stations and the judiciary and all of the institutions have been corrupted by China. So, yikes. So, fixing this problem is going to be a tall order. MLI is reporting a committee for concealment why NSICOP is ill-suited to investigate Beijing's electoral interference. Ryan Alford for Inside Policy. A public inquiry is necessary, and the inquiry must have the power to call any witness it chooses and obtain any document it requires. Oh, so now that's important? Listen, we had a public inquiry, and now they're withholding documents. They're saying, here's Eric, and it says, imagine a courtroom trial where the accused get to select what evidence the judge gets to see. Prime Minister Trudeau and his office are doing exactly that by blocking Justice Hoag's request for all documents she wants for a fair inquiry on foreign interference. They're calling for another public inquiry, and they're saying, yeah, this time they should be able to compel witnesses and stuff and get all the documents they want. We're in the middle of that. A new public inquiry. Oh, great. That's definitely going to get to the bottom of this. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. National Post is reporting lawsuit seeks immunity for NSICOP members if they reveal top secret intel on foreign collaborators. 2 rulings have new significant implications for revealing classified information following NSICOP's report released on June 3rd. Now, I think it was yesterday, there was a little video talking about how anybody has parliamentary privilege, and there was a recent ruling saying that parliamentary privilege is upheld, and regardless of the rules in place, I think it was the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that parliamentary privilege needs to be upheld, and you can't have secret clauses or clauses that prevent parliamentarians from being able to say whatever they want on the House floor and have that speech protected. Okay, so here's part of the article. Could a member of the Intelligence Oversight Committee, it was saying that they could, and this is saying they can't, but the mechanism that they're saying that they can't is just a clause in the bill, in the NSICOP kind of everything, in the NSICOP rules, basically, that says they can't. And so if somebody did stand up in the House of Commons and say, these people are treasonous, as reported in the NSICOP report, blah, 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 then right away they'd have consequences as written out in the stipulations for agreeing to NSICOP, and then it would go to the courts, right? So right away you'd have a situation of, okay, we have the names, but also this person's being prosecuted, and so the prosecution would take the lead story, right? Because they're not interested. It's oh, we've got the Epstein names, right? And Donald Trump's a racist, so they go with the Donald Trump's a racist, and then people forget that the Epstein names were released or something to that effect. Happens all the time. Okay, so could a member of the Intelligence Oversight Committee claim parliamentary privilege to reveal classified intelligence in the House of Commons and be immune from prosecution? That's a question that could be headed to the Supreme Court of Canada. The issue has surely never been more relevant than now, given the release last week of the committee's bombshell foreign interference report alleging that some parliamentarians wittingly conspired with other governments. In a late April ruling that largely went unnoticed, the Ontario Court of Appeal ruled that legislators on the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, NSICOP, cannot claim parliamentary immunity if they improperly, quote, reveal state secrets obtained through their work. The ruling has a new and significant implications for the ongoing debate about revealing classified information following NSICOP report released on June 3rd. The case has pit national security against the vital principles of parliamentary privilege in a Westminster-style democracy, which gives legislators immunity for actions undertaken as part of their duties. But the issues may be far from closed, as Lakehead University constitutional law professor Ryan Alford says he plans on asking the country's top court to hear his appeal of the decision. In April, a panel of 3 appeal court judges ruled that parliamentarians were within its rights when it included a clause in the NSICOP Act that excludes legislators on the committee from parliamentary immunity if they divulge sensitive information without the proper immunity or proper authority. That could include, for example, revealing to the House of Commons which parliamentarians are suspected by the intelligence agencies of having wittingly aided a foreign government contrary to the interests of Canada. That's treason, wittingly. Oh yes, do you have your wits about you, sir? The appeal court conceded that the exclusion contained in the NSICOP Act, quote, does limit the right to free speech and debate within Parliament, but that it was unconstitutional, that it wasn't unconstitutional, excuse me. That limitation stops far short of anything approaching constitutional renovation or an embargo on parliamentary oversight of matters pertaining to national security, the panel wrote. But put bluntly, a committee member who improperly reveals information protected by the Security of Information Act in Parliament or in a committee of Parliament can go to jail for the statements, the ruling reads. So there you go. Jail. Straight to jail. You read the names of traitors, straight to jail. You overcook fish, straight to jail. Undercook chicken, or read names of traitors, straight to jail. Eric says, imagine a courtroom. Oh yeah, I've already done this. I don't need to, we won't play that, but we'll carry on. David says, asking this question on a survey was just launched yesterday. Does Pierre Poilievre's refusal to get a security clearance to review the report make you feel better or worse about him? Or does it not impact your view on the conservative leader? Considering that we just heard that they could go to, like, that parliamentarians could go to jail if they improperly reveal anything that's in the report that is not authorized to be revealed. What do you think? I think that Mr. Poilievre is probably correct in his choice to not have read the report and not sign any of those documentations, because it would limit his ability to speak on the matter, right? And so, which is exactly what they want. Holly Doan is reporting Senator Wu predicts McCarthyist witch hunt with Parliament's passage of bill mandating public disclosure of Canadians lobbying for foreign governments. Wow, there you go. Other Senate Liberals ridiculed Wu's claim. So some senators think it's a bad idea, and some think that that's crazy. So interesting. Maxime Bernier says, after clapping for Zelensky and the Nazi vet last fall, the corrupt establishment parties in Ottawa all held a moment of silence this week for a Khalistani terrorist murdered a year ago in BC who immigrated to Canada with a fake passport. How long will they go? How low will they go to pander to extremist Sikh immigrants who brought their tribal conflict to Canada? It's true, right? It's true. And are we going to be allowed to get to the bottom of this? Well, not if the Trudeau government can help it, right? No, at all. Holy smoke. We have to talk about the UK and Russia. This kind of popped, like, this was just a story that came together this morning, and I thought it's very interesting. So Combat says Russia Foreign Minister Lavrov says, quote, if Ukraine had not broken the 2014 Minsk agreements, it would now be at 1991 borders, the same borders it so passionately dreams of. Ukraine itself, by the hands of those who came to power through a bloody coup, destroyed its territorial integrity. So what happened in 91 matters. Russia has a long memory. They remember the agreements made and broken. And they're saying, like, if Ukraine had just stayed the course and not been stupid or not been taken over by by NATO, then they'd have what they want or what they wanted. But now they've got a war in a destroyed country, right? BBC News is reporting West provoked the Ukrainian war, says Nigel Farage. Ho, ho, ho. What's that, Nigel? And yeah, he's talking. Now, I think that these guys are talking cross-purpose. I think they're kind of talking past each other. Nigel, I think, is not doing a great job at painting the picture that I think is much clearer than the picture he's painting. Because fundamentally, there were agreements made in the 90s. The agreements were broken by the West, by NATO. And that's it. And there was a coup in 2014 to install NATO leadership. And Nigel just needs to tell that story. And instead, he kind of goes off talking about himself a bit much. And he lets the news broadcaster kind of imply that he's carrying Putin's water. Like he's making Putin's argument for him, right? And I think it's a mistake. It's clumsy. Nigel is usually better than this. Anyway, here we go. This is a minute. It's interesting, though. It's interesting. Here we go.
Vladimir Putin sent his troops across the border in 22. You blamed the West, not him. You said, I'll just read it to you and then you can react, that on a tweet, it was a consequence of EU and NATO expansion. Is that a judgment you stand by?
Right. I'll tell you what you don't know. I stood up in the European Parliament in 2014 and I said, and I quote, there will be a war in Ukraine. Why did I say that? It was obvious to me that the ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union was giving this man a reason to his Russian people for us again and to go to war.
But you were echoing him.
I was, sorry.
You were echoing him. That's what Putin says.
No. Sorry, I've been saying this actually since the 1990s. Ever since the
so
fall
is
of the
he.
wall. But hang on a second. We've provoked this war. It's, of course it's his fault. He's used what we've done
we
as an
provoked
excuse.
the invasion of Ukraine.
And very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansionism.
But I'm asking.
So it just seems like Nigel wasn't clear, and maybe it's just because I didn't watch the full exchange, and it's just a minute out of it, right? Maybe he gets a better showing and explains more, because it does take a little bit longer to explain everything that's going on and how, yes, the West is responsible for the conflict in Ukraine at this point in time. I think probably the West is responsible for the conflict in the Middle East right now as well. Yes, I do. I think that we are, because we keep funding it. We keep setting things up so that there is conflict. We're setting up conflict. They're setting up conflict right now in Canada and in the West for competition for women, competition for housing. Yeah, yes, because there's a lot of men and not as many women. And so when you have 3 or 4 men per woman, competition for women drives actual conflict, right? Fists are punching. Okay, here's Andrew Brigden. I think that's his name, yeah. And he is talking about false flags and other ways to goad people into a war. And I don't think that the Ukrainian thing, people understand too much how NATO's started this war, been the aggressor in this war. And so they need to change the narrative, right? It's like starting a fight in a hockey game, right? You need to change the energy. So we'll do this and maybe this will work. So he says it'll maybe be a nuclear bomb, and of course to blame Russia, and then the draft and all bets are off. Everybody's going to save the West from evil Putin. Here we go.
But if it goes nuclear, no one's winning, are they?
Do you think he would?
Yes, I think he would. I've got defence analysts feeding me information, and they're in, services, and they're saying that there is going to be a nuclear detonation in Europe.
Who by?
Well, it could be a dirty bomb. I mean, there's a lot of nuclear material floating around in Ukraine from their nuclear reactors. I mean, to create contamination, all you need is some conventional explosives and some nuclear material, and you've got a dirty bomb. They may have already been set off in the Donbass area now.
And that could be the false flag that starts the war.
Yeah. There's many ways it can be done.
Like 9/11.
Like 9/11.
That's kind of interesting, eh? Building 7 didn't Epstein itself, right? Very interesting indeed. Here is Camus, and he says, German farmer Anthony Lee. In Germany, we have a farming minister who tells us we should only eat 10 grams of wheat. He says, this says meat, but I think it's wheat. But maybe he says meat. Maybe he does say meat. Here we go.
I mean, we forgot loads of things which are going completely wrong in Germany. I mean, we have a farming minister who's telling us we should only eat, and this is not a joke, 10 grams meat per day.
Meat,
right?
yeah, he said meat.
Honestly, what they are trying to tell us, 10 grams.
Crazy. 10 grams of meat per day? Like, that's not enough. It's not enough. So, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring our civilization to the point where we're serfs that eat meat 1 meal a day, maybe if we're lucky, right? Not every day. You can eat pasta. This is an interesting self-own. The Liberals put this out, and like, this is Liberal Party, blue check mark, and they get 100,000 views on this. And this is like an ad for the Conservative Party. Weird. Here we go.
Have you had any meetings with any MPs from any parties?
Yes, I have with my own MP, Michelle Ferreri. I have spoken to Larry Brock. Again, I work within the realm of, I go through my MP, which is Michelle Ferreri. I'm from Peterborough Kawartha, and she's my MP. I spoke with Larry Brock and his office regarding the carbon tax election. He was very receptive of talking to people. Yeah, I know that Miss Lynn Brooks, who also was not allowed inside today, she has made appointments and spoken to several Conservative MPs that they've opened their doors and welcomed her to have a conversation, and several other people. So we don't seem to be having a problem with communication with the Conservatives. We seem to be being roadblocked in communication with the NDP party and the Liberal Party.
And the Liberals say, Convoy leader, we don't seem to be having a problem with communication with the Conservatives. Great job, Liberal Party. So, Uniparty confirmed. The Liberal Party is now actively advertising for Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. Wiretap Media shares this. I don't know what this is from, but this is a Rolling Thunder representative, not Freedom Convoy. And this guy's name is Neil Shereed. Shereed. I think so. Okay. And he's talking about who runs our government. And he has great questions. I can't disagree with the questions he's asking. Here we go.
And who else runs our country? 2017, Klaus Schwab said he has penetrated our cabinet with more than 50% of the cabinet are young global leaders. Our deputy prime minister is on the board of the World Economic Forum. She is also very, very good friends with George Soros. Before she came into politics, she had a book deal, but then she came into politics. She would have dinner with George Soros. Who's running our country? And who else runs our country?
It is a very, very important question, because it doesn't seem like Canadians run the country. Because if you talk about the treasonous ministers in the government, well, straight to jail. Buck says a selection from CSIS threat risk assessment during the 22 Freedom Convoy, a thread previously reported, but the GoFundMe campaign was almost entirely Canadian. It wasn't until it was shut down for spurious reasons that it attracted the attention of sympathetic American donors. CSIS has assessed a medium threat to uniformed personnel before the convoy arrived in Ottawa. Here's a matrix to interpret the meaning of assessment for future reference. So there's a whole matrix there, but I'm not going into detail on this. I'm just giving the tweet information, and you can check it out if you're interested. Link is in the description. Buck says, from open source aggregated AC LED armed conflict location and event data, the data suggests that protests arose organically across the country as a result of the trucker vaccine mandate. The protest in the month after the mandate was imposed was more than tenfold greater than the prior year. Government toady Justin Ling was leaked unclassified threat highlight reports, which he published on Twitter. CSIS clearly was surprised and launched an investigation. Seems an effort was made to justify the EA, including among foreign audience. The UK Guardian. CSIS assessed the risk of ISIS terrorism as greater than that of COVID resistors with the same medium risk. Sensitivity to the Freedom Convoy seems driven by global events. The Munich Security Conference was concerned about European freedom convoys inspired by the Canadian convoy. I think it's clear perusing the documents that the law enforcement and intelligence agencies considered anyone who believed that government has lost its legitimacy because of overreach and foreign interference to be ideologically motivated violent extremist adherents. Example. So there's some examples. Our buddy Justin Ling, again running narratives for government, makes it into the post-EA threat report. Seems we have intelligence receiving info from journalists, hyping leaked documents from intelligence. I think it's called narrative laundering, right? Rap smear. Be careful of the company you keep. So there you go. Interesting stuff. Some of the leaks seem like it was done to justify invoking the Emergency Act, et cetera, et cetera. All sorts of improper stuff. And we're being manipulated by the government. We're being manipulated to believe things that aren't true so the government can continue to act with impunity. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful